Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Sam. It's another dreary, gross, gray day outside. So let me know what you think of the lighting in this video because I'm only using my ring light and what minimal natural light I have. Seeing as we are encroaching the end of the year, it is time to talk about, I guess, my reads for the whole year. I'm going to be doing the end of year book tag. This book tag was created by Destiny. I'll have her linked down below. This was really the only tag that I saw going around recently. I think there's another one, but I didn't love the question, so we're just gonna do this one. I'll have all of the questions listed down below as well if you want to take part or answer any of the questions in the comments or anything, so we can chat about some books and our reading over the past year. So there's 22 questions, so I'm just going to jump right in and we'll talk about them. So question number one, starting off with a bang, what is the most disappointing book that you read this year? And I looked back at my books over the past year, and honestly, some of the things that I read in January or even just the first 6 months of the year feels like I read them a year ago. I know that's been a year between January and now, but it feels longer than that. It feels like those were from an entirely different year. I feel like a lot of the books that I read this year were kind of disappointing. I read a lot of hyped TikTok books or series. They're all disappointing, but I think the most disappointing, I'm gonna have to go with a series on this one, is the Twisted series by Anna Huang. I really wanted to love this. I was very excited to read these books. And obviously, if you love these books, I'm so happy for you. I really wish that they worked for me. And that's the same with any of the books that I not necessarily talk negatively about, but the ones that just didn't work for me personally. Everyone has different reading tastes. So if you like something that I didn't like, then I am so happy for you. I honestly wish that I loved every book that I read because nothing's better than having a book that you absolutely love. But yeah, this series was just not it for me. I really enjoyed the first half to 70% of the book, and then this series really falls into the typical romance format where you have a romance, things are starting to get good, and then there's a third act conflict just for the sake of there being a third act conflict. I feel like all of the conflicts in this series were unnecessary, and I do think that some conflicts are done well. They make sense to the story, but these ones all just felt very out of left field, or were so easily avoidable. So it was just extremely frustrating, and I couldn't. Number two is the Underdog book of the year. So this is, I guess, a book series that you weren't 100% sure how you were going to feel about, but ended up that you enjoyed. For me, I think that has to be the Heart Hassle series. This is a series that I don't hear anybody talk about. This is by Raven Kennedy. It's the Cupidity series that I keep talking about all year. And I still have 2 books left that I'm hoping to get to this month. But like I said, I haven't really heard anything about this series. I just saw it come up once and I thought it was just a novella series. So I figured I would just get through it quickly before I jump into her Plated Prisoner series. That was not the case. It's not all novellas. And this wasn't a 5-star series for me, but I do really enjoy it and I keep coming back to it over and over again to talk about, and it's not I think about it all the time, but it does come across my mind and I have really enjoyed it. Number 3, a book that was overhyped. Again, like I said with question 1, I feel like a lot of the books and series that I read this year just didn't work for me and were overhyped, but I also didn't want to pick the same books for every question. So for this one, I went with Dawn of Onyx by Kate Golden, I believe. I read this back in March or something with Emily. We did about a read of this one. I feel like I only saw 5-star reviews for this book. Everybody seemed to love it. I feel like I didn't see any bad reviews, and this was not great. I don't know if it was just a case of first book syndrome. I'm really hoping that the series gets better, but I just didn't connect with the characters, and it seems like we were going on like a very slow burn, and it was starting to get good, and then it was like a switch flipped, and all of a sudden they were getting it on, and it didn't make any sense in the slightest. So the pacing was just really weird for this one, and I'm curious to see where it goes because I really wanted to like it, and I think that it's like an interesting premise. It's like a kingdom based off different jewels, which I kind of also found confusing. I don't know. The second book comes out in April, I believe, and so I'm intrigued to see if it gets better. Number 4, your favorite book couple of the year. This was difficult for me because I feel like for the majority of the books that I read, as soon as I finish it, I like totally forget who the characters' names are and like all of the intricacies that happened. But I think I have to pick Rhett and Summer from Reckless by Elsie Silver. I always get the titles of those books confused. I'll have the actual cover up here. This is the first book in the Chestnut Spring series and the only book in that series that I've read. I have this book listed in my like book tracker that I use for every month that is posted on my Instagram, but I never talked about it in my like first reading wrap up. So this was another book that I buddy read with Emily. I loved this. This book had me giggling and kicking my feet. I loved the two of them together. The banter was great. I just love everything about them, and I can't wait to continue the series. It's definitely been way too long, but I'm hoping in 2024 I can get back to this. Question number 5 is my favorite character of the year, and that has to be Selena Sargothian from Throne of Glass. I love her. She, I think, is my favorite main character of all time. This series changed my life this year. Every time I finished a book, I wanted to start it all over again. And I kind of want to, I feel like a lot of people read Throne of Glass this year for the first time. And I buddy read this with Emily again and had just the best time. Buddy reads are honestly like one of my favorite things about this year. Read your books with friends. It makes them so much better. I kind of want to just binge them all because I think that would just be so much fun. Maybe next year. We'll see. Number 6, a book that surprised you. For me, that has to be Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. For some reason, I did not think that this book was going to be for me. I honestly wasn't even going to read it, but I kept seeing people talk about it and I kept seeing people say how good it is, and I finally just put it on hold at the library and ended up waiting a while because it was so popular, and I was terrified to read it. I really didn't think I was gonna like it, but wow, that book was so good. I'm gonna put this in again. I don't think this can be compared to really any other series. It's much more of like a historical fantasy, in my opinion. There's like really only magical objects and a war between gods. I just absolutely loved the romance in this. It was just so pure, and I was just like giggling and smiling like the whole way. I love them so much. Question number 7, a new favorite author that you found in 2023. For me, that has to be Hannah Bonin Young. One of her books was recommended to me on my 12 book challenge for the year, and I'm so glad that it was. I absolutely love her books. I have read Next of Kin, Next to You, and Set the Record Straight so far. I still have Out on a Limb left. And overall, I love her writing. I think I talked about this after the first book that I read by her, but these books just feel like a warm hug. Just this author's writing feels like safe. I don't know. She talks about like very important topics, and just in a way that is so simple in the way that like you understand it, but has so much like depth and meaning, and I just absolutely love her writing. Question number 8, the happiest book that you read this year. For me, I think that was Pucking Around by Emily Rath. I just had the best time with this book, and I can't wait to continue this series. This was a really, really long book to be just like a hockey reverse harem romance, but I had so much fun. It's incredibly spicy, so if that's not your cup of tea, definitely don't read it. But I just remember having the best time, so I think that was my happiest book. Number 9, the most frustrating book of 2023 for me. Again, this is like a series, but the Maybe Someday series by Colleen Hoover. Oh, I was so annoyed by this series, and I probably should have DNF'd it, but I had to get through and be able to have a full opinion on the series and the characters. I really disliked basically all of the characters. One of our main characters is deaf, which I found very interesting because I had never read a deaf character before, and the way that it was handled and written was very strange, and our other main character made no effort to try to learn sign language. She just made him like lip read and send anything over text or like messenger, which was just so frustrating because if you care about somebody, I feel like you would do anything to try and communicate or like make their life easier, or at least like put some effort. I don't know. It was just really annoying. Number 10, the best adaptation of 2023. I don't think I watched any adaptations except for Daisy Jones and the Six. And I even haven't finished that series, but I really enjoyed it, what I've seen. That book, and yeah, that book kind of had a chokehold on me for a while. I absolutely loved the album. It really felt like they were going to release another album or more songs, and which I wish that they just would, because like it's such good music and songs, and it was just so amazing. I absolutely loved that book. It was so unique to anything that I had read, although there was definitely some differences that frustrated me in the show. It's a really good adaptation. Number 11 is the longest book that you read this year, and that has to be Kingdom of Ash, without a doubt. This is 20 pages shy of 1,000 pages. I did read quite a few long books this year, but this is the longest by far. This book hurts so bad, and I feel like a lot of long books don't have to be this long, but this had to be this long. There's like nothing that I would have wanted cut or anything. A great conclusion to the series, and like I said, I already want to jump back in. Number 12, the opposite of that, the shortest book that I read this year. This was the year that Emily and I started reading our trauma reads, which is basically just the shortest books that we can find that are traumatic in some way, whether it's just cringy writing or cringy topics. I'm all about it now. So for this one, it obviously had to be one of those novellas, and this was Tied to the Tentacle Chair by Sibley Stamps. This was a 20-page, I think, tentacle dubcon or something, and it was honestly really good. Sibley Stamps is definitely a monster, like erotica, not author that I think I will look for more things on, because I've enjoyed both stories that I have read by them, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. Number 13 is your favorite cover of the year. Again, like I went through and looked at all my little pictures of all of the books that I read, and I feel like I didn't read a ton of beautiful covers, except I have to shout out the Throne of Glass new covers. I think all of these covers are absolutely stunning. I would pull them all out, but there's so many books. But I love the art on these. I think they are so beautiful. But in an effort to try to have different answers, I picked Iron Flame. I just love the, what is this called? Like metallic sort of cover, and the dragons, and it's just very interesting, I think, and very beautiful. So I know that this book got a lot of flack, but I really liked it, and I'm very excited for the rest of the series. Number 14 is a book that you haven't stopped thinking about. I have to say Throne of Glass. partially because I love the series so much, and also because I'm inundated with Throne of Glass fan art and reels. And like I said, I feel like everyone is reading Throne of Glass right now. Yeah, I think this is my Roman Empire. I absolutely love this series so much. Changed my life this year. Number 15 is the cringiest book that you read this year. Again, I have to go with one of my trauma reads, and I have to go with Hornado. Although Hornado itself wasn't all that cringy, and it was definitely a lot better than I expected it to be. The Kindle Unlimited download of this includes 5 novellas, and the other like bonus novellas that go along with this are definitely way worse, especially the one about the father and his daughters. Just, ooh, gross. Number 16, an unpopular book that you loved. Again, I feel like a lot of the books that I read this year were highly rated or highly talked about, and I didn't want to talk about the same books over and over. I decided to pick the Soulmate Equation. I feel like a lot of not very many people talk about this book, and it might be because it is a little bit older, but I feel like a lot of people don't enjoy this book and it doesn't have like their greatest ratings. But I really like this book. I really like the story. I thought it was a fun concept and just so cute. And this is by Christine Lauren, if I didn't mention that. I feel like their books are like hit or miss for a lot of people. Some of them are really great, and I find that honestly a lot of their older books are really, really good, and some of the newer ones just haven't really worked for me. But this one was great. I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. Number 17 is your highest and lowest rated on Goodreads. So I went and sorted my red shelf on Goodreads and found the lowest rated books. And I actually picked 2 because the lowest rated was Hornado, which that was entirely cringy. And like, I feel like you can't effectively rate a book that is like I went in knowing that it was going to be bad. So I do agree with that, but I also picked like a regular book, which was One Italian Summer by Rebecca Sorley, I think. And I think this had like 3.6 stars on Goodreads. And I do agree with this. I think I rated this 3 stars. It definitely wasn't like the worst book that I read all year by a long shot. And I think the story was unique and interesting, but I just didn't connect to the characters of the story really. So it was one of those books that was fine, but wasn't like great by any means. So I guess I kind of I agree with the rating. And then the highest rated was Kingdom of Ash, which, I mean, yeah, like it's the conclusion to an amazing series, and this has to be the highest rated. Although I don't know that this is my favorite book in the series. I think it might be a close second. But I also can't pick a favorite because this series just as a whole is like a 6-star series for me. Number 18, favorite quote of the year. I'm not an annotator. Like I don't really annotate. I will highlight some quotes and stuff from like my Kindle reads because I'll save them in a highlight, but I honestly don't like go back and read any of them. And I was just going through a couple of them and there wasn't anything that really stood out to me. But the quotes that do like come across my mind time and time again are from Heir of Fire. I'm not going to say what they are because I don't want anything to be spoiled with the series. I really think that you should go in blind because the series changes so much between the first book and the last. But there's 2 main quotes in this series that I absolutely love. And when I read the scene with this quote in it for the first time, I was like, yep, that's it. I need it tattooed on my body. I don't know if I'll ever do it, but I absolutely love it. So I need to get a sticker or something, a sweater, because it's just everything to me. Number 19 is the book that you read with the most unique concept. For me, this has to be Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I just read this in November, and this was definitely the most unique concept that I read this year. This is a sci-fi. Many years in the future, society has evolved as much as they can evolve and have entirely erased the life expectancy and are able to like regenerate and like turn back time, I guess. So like you can be like 80 years old and then be like, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna go back and be like 25 again. And so they have to create this group called scythes who are responsible for killing off the population to maintain the population to be in balance with like the world. Very unique, very excited to continue that series. Number 20 is the book that you would reread. I feel like for me this is kind of difficult because like with a fantasy series, I will reread those over and over, especially if it's an incomplete series, because they're so long between each book that comes out. I am more likely to reread the series in preparation for the next book because of all of the political and world building and tiny details that you might forget between one book and the next. So for me this year, that is Throne of Glass. This is a complete series, but I want to read it again and again and again, as well as the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros, Fourth Wing. This is just such a unique story and two amazing fantasy series in 1 year. Number 21, your reading goal reflection and 2024 plans. So for 2023, my goal was to read 50 books and I ended up reading 116 so far. We still have the rest of December, but I don't think I'll get much farther, which is way more than I ever thought that I would read. I definitely wanted to keep it manageable so that I didn't have a goal that was so far-fetched and I might not accomplish. So for 2024, I want to do something similar. I want to challenge myself a little bit, but I also really want to try and get a better balance between reading and everything else that I want to do in a day. I haven't 100% decided on what my reading goal is going to be, but it might be 75 or 100. I feel like both of those, based on my reading this year, are easily attainable and still a little bit of a challenge. So we'll see what 2024 brings. Which brings us to the last question, question 22, which is what are you planning for 2024? So like I said, or touched on a couple times in the last 21 questions, but I was going through and looking at the different little icons and my reading templates for the year. And there really isn't a lot of books that stood out to me. I didn't have a ton of 5-star reads. I mean, like I had a whole series of 5-star reads, but not as many like individual books and a lot of books that I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of. For 2024, I want to prioritize books that I am interested in reading. I want to read stuff that I'm excited about. I want to read things not necessarily that are just TikTok hyped, but things that I think I'll really enjoy and that I am interested in, as well as trying to balance my reading and not force myself into reading things just because I put them on a TBR. So that is the end of your book tag. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. Let me know any of your answers to these questions down below. I think that would be so fun to talk about. I hope that you have a great rest of your week and I will see you in the next one. Bye.